Hey, everybody, this is Eric Brown, your Beverly Hills real estate agent, bringing you the best of Los Angeles, where we share the best and brightest that Los Angeles has to offer. And I have got a special treat for you today. A friend of mine, Carolyn Scott of the Healthy Voyager. Carolyn, great to see you.
Yeah, you too. Hello.
So I always like to just dive right in. And I especially as we roll into like new years and new timeframes, and people are setting whatever is their agenda or intention or their goal. Health is always such a big concept. And so maybe you can just dive in and tell us a little bit about you and the Healthy Voyager.
Sure. So I'm a holistic nutritionist and a plant-based chef, and I host a travel show called the Healthy Voyager. I launched it back in 2006 just because I was not seeing anything in the marketplace for people that had or followed a special diet. Um, all the travel shows that were out at the time, and kind of a lot of them now still, it was either an extreme of someone going to eat bugs in the Amazon or someone eating a 30-pound burger. There was no in between. There was nothing for the average Joe traveler, let alone someone with special dietary needs. So back then I launched it on my own. So pre-social media, pre-smartphone, I launched the show, and now it's snowballed into what it is now. And the show still showcases plant-based eating around the world, but it's become so much more than that. It's adventure, it's sustainable travel, it's cultural travel. So I'm lucky that I get to go all over the world and do some really fun stuff and meet some really neat people, and be a resource for people looking for not only healthy travel but healthy living at home.
That's so cool. And I can only imagine the things, since you had mentioned, pre-internet, pre-smartphone, the things that you've seen from then to the things that you've seen today. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, I was actually chatting with someone today. Back when I started, I used to travel with an XL1 digital camera, which was a digital camera of its era, and it was kind of petite. But it was a big camera, and then it was shot on mini DV tapes, so you'd have to put the tape in a digital machine so that you could digitize it. It was not easy, but back then it was state of the art and pretty cool that you could produce your own stuff, right? So but now the fact that I literally shoot everything on my phone is insane. And just to see what travel has become online. I started in the very early days of YouTube. That was the only place to put a self-produced show. And now it's just insane what has transpired, from YouTube shows to other digital channels to travel influencers on Instagram. It's just blown up, and I never would have thought back then, because I was doing it kind of as a calling card to be able to sell the show to networks, that I could keep doing what I'm doing on my own and not have to rely on a network and keep it going. So it's really interesting having seen what it was and what it became. I never would have thought that this could be a job in and of itself, and I could do it just all on my own.
And not only that, what I think is probably pretty cool is the mission that you get to provide. As the world has become smaller with now access to technology and access to travel, so many more people want to see this world. And I can
Mhm.
only imagine, if you have even the smallest of special needs diets, how that
Yeah.
can be if you're going to a place that you're just not familiar with. And so I would guess that your audience is probably pretty, pun intended, ravenous for the content.
Yeah, I mean, now being vegan is so mainstream. Um, but it wasn't when I started. It was pretty difficult. And I've been vegan since 1998. So it was really hard then. So my job has become quite easy these days, but it's still, in some parts of, I would actually guess that in parts of the world that you would think would be difficult to eat plant-based, it's not. It's actually harder for me in some parts of the US, which is bizarre. But yeah, now it's just grown into everything gluten-free. And then, there's the ketos and the paleos and the, the low sodium and there's so many things. And for a lot of people who follow really strict diets, they're afraid to really venture out past the usual touristy places. They eat at the hotel because it's safe, or they don't want to go to certain adventurous parts of the world because they're worried about what they can eat. And I've been to all ends of the earth, from the North Pole to the African bush, and I've not starved a single time. So I'm proof positive that no matter what your ability or dietary issue or whatever it is, there's something for everyone out in the world to be seen and explored.
One of the things that I'm a transplant, not originally from Los Angeles. And one of the things that I have loved most about the city over the past decade of getting used to it has been the diversity in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Language, ethnicity, religion, culture, foods. And
Yeah.
so for the local audience here that now wants to travel and even, take in the city here, what type of things with you and your content and maybe some of your products or services should people know of, or can they tap into to get a better understanding of how they may really accelerate the experiences that they want?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is the hub for all things Healthy Voyager. So it's healthyvoyager.com. So there's weekly articles, everything from travel articles to vegan recipes to just healthy lifestyle tips. And then my show is there, my cooking show and my travel show. You can go to the shop section and you can find my cookbook, The Healthy Voyager's Global Kitchen. It's the 10th anniversary edition. I put out the second edition, not this Christmas, this last Christmas. So that's up and available. And yeah, everything that you need is there. And obviously you can contact me from the contact page there. And I'm across all social media as Healthy Voyager.
That's great. Out of curiosity, what are you seeing? And again, you with your years of experience in the places that you have been to, what have you seen over the past several years? We've gone through a global pandemic, like travel restrictions, food changes, et cetera. What are some of the things that you've seen that have changed, and what trends might you see coming up in the future?
Well, everything came to somewhat of a standstill, obviously, in 2020. I was fortunate enough to still be able to travel to some parts of the world. So that was interesting to see some pretty major tourist destinations empty. But what was beautiful was to see that the entire world was going through this. So I was in the Maldives, and I was chatting with some of the staff because it was very slow, and just to hear all the same things that people were talking about here at home. We were just all going through this global shared experience that, as bizarre and kooky as it was, it was also kind of beautiful because so many people were able to reconnect via things like Zoom, and to really just take stock in their home life and their families and their friends, and just to see the world just stop was really interesting. And to be able to see it firsthand was really special. And I think now travel has kind of bounced back to pre-pandemic. In fact, I think it's gotten crazier. I think it's busier. Flights are a little more difficult now because they had canceled so many routes. So it was so difficult to get everything back to pre-pandemic. So I think flying isn't as fun anymore. Just the hassle of, TSA and being at the airport and so many canceled flights, which didn't happen as often pre-pandemic. You see it so much more of it now. And now travel restrictions have eased up quite a bit around the world, but there was a time where you had to kind of play this game, kind of like being in Angelino when you have to read a parking sign and it's like a limerick. Can I park here? It was like that for a couple of years with travel. Like, okay, well, what do I need? I need this paperwork. I need this test. I need this, so it made travel a lot more difficult in that respect, but luckily things have eased up quite a bit. So I think we're getting back to somewhat normalcy. So, and hopefully it stays that way.
Sure. You know, I've been thinking about this as we've been talking. I have two younger brothers, and us growing up, we loved superheroes. And so one of the
Mhm,
keys to superheroes is their origin story, like what made them become a superhero. And
mhm.
so, for those listeners that are out there, you've got two kind of superpowers, not only your focus on nutrition and a unique space, but then also combining that with travel. So I can't be the only one that's going to be listening, but where does that come from? What's the origin story behind it?
Well, I was born with the travel bug. I was born in Colombia. My mom's Colombian. I was born there. My father is American, so pretty much right after I was born, we went back to the States. So I had a passport by the time I was 2 days old. So I was on a international flight 2 weeks later. So it bit me young. And my dad was a very adventurous traveler. So I think I get my adventure, risky travel from him. Uh, Always have been a wanderluster. So when I went vegan back in 98, uh, and it was not simple. I would kind of take notes and I would overpack food. I would kind of laugh and say I would do hotel MacGyver stuff. I would use the coffee pot to cook certain things, or I did all kinds of kooky stuff, and it worked for me. And then I thought I can't be the only person, vegan or not, diabetic or whatever. There's so many people that are afraid to leave their homes and their general areas. And I thought I can't be the only person that's like kooky and wants to travel, whether I starve or not. So it dawned on me in '05. Let me throw it out there. And I was a publicist. I had my own PR firm for a while. And so I kind of knew how to build a brand, and I kind of knew how to find people to pitch. So I went to some big networks and they were all like, wow, that's a really great concept, but we don't do healthy. And I was like, well, that's kind of the point, guys. Like, let's do something new. So from there, the seed was planted. I was like, well, I'll just do it myself. There's got to be other people like me or somewhat like me that could use this information. And yeah, so my love for health and travel, just I married them, and here I am today.
And here we are today. Gosh, where does the time go, right? I'm sure it has flown by.
I can't believe, yeah, 2006 I launched it. It's
So
crazy.
where do you have bucket list places that you want to hit this year?
I still do. I don't know if you can see behind me, I have my big map of of the world and like places I've been.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
And I was chatting with someone today that even though I've been to a gajillion places, there's still a gajillion more. So Antarctica has been my white whale, and then I'll have my 7 continents done. I've worked with an adventure company a few years ago. Oh my gosh, it's probably been 5 or 6 years now. Geez. And I went to the North Pole with them, and they launched an eco-friendly cruise to Antarctica recently. And I thought, well, that's my wheelhouse. So I've been waiting to work with them for that ship to launch, and they just kind of restarted after COVID. So hopefully those trips will transpire soon, because then after that, there's still a huge list, but that one's the one that I'm like, I got to do it. I got to get there.
Sure. So if someone, I can imagine, and this has been my experience as well in real estate, is that sometimes when someone is looking, to purchase or to sell a property, they might want a little bit more handholding. So you had
Mhm.
mentioned people can get your cookbook. Congratulations on the 10-year anniversary.
Thank you.
They can watch tips. They can get to your blog. What if they wanted some handholding? What if they really wanted a more tailored experience? Tell me types of things that you might suggest to them, or things that you and Healthy Voyager can offer.
Yeah, obviously everything's pretty DIY. You find the information on my website. In the past, I used to host tours, and I've been in talks with a few different companies to relaunch them this year. Um, I've done a few small ones on my own since I switched companies. Um, but I've been talking to some new ones this year. So once those get fully planned out, that'll be up on the website and social media if anyone wants to join me. It's a wide variety as well. So some will be just kind of relaxing retreats talking about health and really enjoying the location. Some will be much more adventurous and moving around a lot and doing some really fun stuff. So there'll be something for everyone. But as far as one-on-one or anything like that, I still do a lot of consultations. So I work with restaurants and hotel chains and cruise lines, theme parks, creating menus and recipes for them and training their staff on special diet, cooking and products. And I used to do one-on-one nutritional consulting. I don't do it as much anymore, just time permitting. But I will every now and again if someone really needs my help. I did a lot of corporate events as well, speaking engagements and health programs. So if anyone needed anything like that, you can find me and information on that on the website as well, healthyvoyager.com.
Perfect. Are you ever doing, and this might go against the mission statement, but are you ever doing anything here locally in Los Angeles? I understand that it's not travel as much, but you had mentioned like food and restaurants and general nutrition, and it's such a melting pot in this city, just out of curiosity.
Oh, yeah. We're so spoiled here. The food here, and I always say, no matter what happens, I don't think I could ever leave LA just because of the food. It's too great what we have here. I don't tend to do much locally, but I have tossed around the idea in the past of doing some meetups at different restaurants. So yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll bring it back. I'll figure something out like that.
Well, it's interesting in my world where, as I connect with contemporaries, there's been more of a push of, I don't want to say going authentic or granular or genuine, but connective.
Yeah.
We've been in space for the past couple of years where there's been a dissonance.
Yeah.
And now we have the ability to kind of connect. And of course, that doesn't have to be local. That can be global too.
Yeah. But yeah, hosting a dinner, I thought of doing local events, and I was chatting with someone about that probably a year or two ago. And I forgot about it until you just brought it up. So maybe I will do something local soon.
Well, I'm thankful to have an expert. And so if you can think of something, and not to put you on the spot, I always love to share as an expert, if you've got one or two big tips in the world of health and travel that someone should know. I mean, you mentioned some really cool things that you said were kooky, like the coffee pot. Is there something in today's world for someone that's looking at healthy traveling that might be a good tip or two that you could offer?
My biggest tips for wellness, whether it's traveling or at home, is get enough sleep. I do not mess around with my sleep. I get 9 hours a night. I make sure I do. Yeah. I mean, I can function on 6 hours, but I prefer 9 hours and no alarms to wake up on my own. It's healthier that way because then your body's ready to go. So sleep is huge, and hydration. I drink so much water. I'm like a camel. So that home life wise, work life wise is huge, but it's also great for travel because I don't suffer from jet lag when I travel long distances because I stay super hydrated. I sleep on the plane, which I know not everyone can do. I'm very fortunate in that regard. But I know how to time it just right to sleep properly and get through that first night, and I hit the ground running. So I know that's a big thing for people who travel internationally, fighting that jet lag. But yeah, those are my 2 tips across the board.
Those are great tips. It's oldies but goodies, right? Like the foundational.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing those. Carolyn, this has been fantastic. Just so great, information packed. I appreciate you sharing your story. We're going to post your contact information here, of course. And you mentioned that the hub is your website. One more time, please, for everyone that is listening.
Sure. It's healthyvoyager.com.
Perfect. As always, folks, Eric Brown, your host today, sharing with you the best of Los Angeles. Tune in for our next episode where we share another great business. Thanks, everybody.